assisting with this. We're going to try to team tag it a little bit. I'll also introduce Matt Cahill, who's a graduate from the university. He's out in the real world doing some stuff. And you want to go up there? Prescott Valley cop. Can't fix your tickets. And don't speak going off campus until you get to his jurisdiction. Anyway, real quick introduction of myself. I'm Bill Waldock. I'm from a different service. I'm a retired Coast Guard officer. A little bit different. I always enjoyed being in the Coast Guard, and like Colonel Peoples, I've been getting a lot of calls here today in the last week on the disappearance of Malaysian Airways 370. Get it out of the way. Does anybody have any questions right now that you want to have answered about that?
Ask him what his opinion is.
What's your opinion?
Is it true that a guy went onto eBay to try to sell that plane?
That is incorrect, and it was actually on Craigslist, and it was a spoof. First off, the quick way to tell, there's no such thing as a 777-300 series. The series right now would be a 200 ER. Secondly, way undervalued. 777's worth about $200 million for the configuration that aircraft was in. He was offered $15 million. Not real. Yes.
Do you think they just lost pressure in the cabin when they just all failed?
No. The argument against that, at that point, the flight that had been on the autopilot, and actually we've had stuff like that happen before. About 5 years ago, we had a Greek 737 airline called Helios take off out of Cyprus, climbed up to altitude, cruised to Athens, and then went into orbit. And it turned out there'd been a failure in the pressurization system. The crew didn't catch it in time. They passed out. By the time they got into Athens, everybody on board's dead. The airplane actually crashed because it ran out of gas. So we had stuff like that happen, but that's not what we saw here. And I will say this, we've seen some fairly unique things beyond just the fact that the airplane disappeared. I've never seen anything like this in over 30 years of investigation. I actually started out in the maritime world, doing maritime investigations. I've been an aircraft accident investigator for almost 30 years. I've never seen anything quite like this. But this is not an accident. Whatever this is, it involves human intent, which is different. Even though you may end up with a crash, it's very different than anything we deal with in accident investigation. Because that intent, you have to use security to control it. Accidents, by nature, are non-intentional events. If somebody got up that morning and said, I'm going to go crash this airplane, that is not an accident. That is an intentional event. And that's what this thing has every appearance of being. I don't see any scenario that's valid that it would be a true accident. If you had a fire on the aircraft, it would have gone down a lot faster. If you had a massive electrical failure, it wouldn't take all the systems out at once. Okay, question?
So if you went missing, right? Okay, so you say that there's like two black spots, is that what they're called?
Flight recorders, there's some
Yeah.
laying around over there.
Yeah, so like you can't so like explore something up close to that, right? So how come you can't like look for it or anything of it?
Well, they're, okay.
Yeah, like there's a is there like no GPS?
This is a more modern one, it's the lighter one. This is a solid state flight data recorder. The only thing that has to survive is this little compartment right here. That's the memory module. It's got a series of data wafers in it. This is the underwater locator beacon you've heard talk about. There's a little radioactive pellet in it. You want to see it? Usually people back away from it. Now the pellet's out. And actually, since I don't trust who I got it from, I actually took a Geiger counter and made sure the radioactive pellet was out of it. But that's what it's powered by. The problem is, if this goes into water deeper than about 5,000 feet, you've got to be within a couple of miles of it to hear it. If you're familiar with some of the underwater issues we run into, something as simple as a thermocline, which is a difference in the water temperature, can change the properties of the sound propagation so much you don't hear it. So we've got a search area right now that's 350,000 square miles. That is probably 20 times bigger than anything I have ever seen in the Coast Guard. And the assets we've got right now, we're not going to find anything, except for blind luck. So Anyway, you pass that around if you want to, don't drop it, you might break it.
Okay.
Did they fly 4 or 7 hours when they, did they fly 4 or 7 hours while they were under the radar, if you will?
To my knowledge, they never were under the radar. That's unfortunately certain news organizations, particularly one based in Atlanta, but I won't mention any names, picked up some bad information from another news outlet, ran with it. That airplane, from all of the sources I've talked to, that airplane, once it got up to 35,000, stayed up there except for one brief period where it was being tracked on military radar. It descended to about 29,000 and went back up to 35 and disappeared. Now, how they know it might have flown for 7 hours, unique way to use some of the systems. In all the years I did search and rescue, I've never seen this type of innovation to be able to use a satellite-based system monitoring system, which is what I'm sure you have all heard the acronym ACARS. That's essentially an automated system monitoring system that is designed to tell the maintenance organization for the airline the health of the aircraft. The data part of it was shut down. Circuit breakers have to be pulled. There's no switch to turn it off. That's full circuit breakers. But the transmission part of it is still active. So it's sort of like when you try to call somebody and you get a return signal that says they're not available. Well, there's an exchange of information there. And literally from the angle of the satellite, who can tell me what a geostationary satellite is? What is it?
A satellite that stays in the same position over the.
How far out is it?
A geosynchronous orbit.
Well, how far out is that? 22,000 miles. He's exactly right. And same as if you have satellite TV, same principle. The point is with these Inmarsat satellites, they don't move. So there's going to be a center point where that satellite is looking straight down at a specific point on the Earth. The airplane's over here, but the satellite can detect it. What they're doing is actually looking at how far the antenna has to move to get the signal from the airplane. That's how they're using it. And I've never seen it used for that. Now it's not real precise. You've got an error area of about 500 miles in diameter. And each ping, which it updates once an hour, each ping is moving. So we know it's somewhere in that 500-mile area, but we don't know where in the area. Yeah.
Why are people so concerned about finding this plane?
It's a compelling mystery. And actually, I just had a long discussion yesterday with a reporter. Today's world, you folks are used to having things right now. And we have real-time capability to talk to somebody on the other side of the planet. And the problem is, we may be very technically sophisticated, but there are times when we forget how big a planet this really is. This planet is more than 3/4 water. And when you get out, how many of you have been out in deep ocean? Okay, cruise ship or airplane? Okay, from the airplane, ever look down at it? It's not blue. What color is it? In the deeper parts, it's almost black, about like your shirts. And you're out of sight of land. And if you pause and look 360 degrees around the horizon, it puts you in perspective of your place in the universe. You're very small. And this is a big planet. And that's why it's so compelling right now. We're 11 days into this thing, and we lost an airplane. And nobody can understand why right now. That's why it's so compelling. And we've got some news organizations that are overly enthusiastic, since you're recording that. Yes, ma'am.
What is your opinion on it? What do you think happened?
Right now, it looks like a suicide. That would be the way I would have to categorize it. We've seen this happen before. We had an Indonesian Airways 737 a few years ago, Silk Air. That was the captain committed suicide. He was in debt over $1 million. He's got all kinds of people suing him, and he has a $10 million life insurance policy. He put the airplane in the water and killed himself and everybody on board. 1999, Egypt Air 990. The co-pilot on that airplane deliberately crashed the aircraft. Now, one of the things there, it's not terrorism. It's not coincidence. Denny, did you know this? That co-pilot had a 12-year-old daughter who had a very bad life-threatening disease. 3 weeks after that airplane crashed, she's in a hospital in Switzerland receiving state-of-the-art care. That co-pilot has a valid motive in his mind for taking the rest of the people in the airplane with him. In the back are 7 Egyptian army generals and a whole slew of other ranks. Any one of them, somebody comes up to him, says, hey, you do this for us, we'll take care of your daughter. Is that terrorism? Anybody think that's terrorism? No, it's not. It's a different thing. It's a suicide in a way, but it's an assassination. It's like if you read history, some of the folks and the Japanese were very bad about this, but some of our folks did too. Last resort, you got an aircraft carrier you want to take out, how do you do it? You dive your airplane into it. You're going too, but you take them with you.
On this particular plane, do you think, what was his motive that you guys think to committing suicide?
There are indications that he may have had some family problems. Beyond that, I don't know.
Well, even if he did bring the plane down, wouldn't we have seen it go down? Like, it's kind of hard to...
Back to this being a giant planet. We know the aircraft was probably at least powered electrically for 7 hours. Now, whether it was on the ground someplace, it's unlikely, but it's possible. But after that, we don't really know where he went. That's the problem. And normally, when you crash an airplane into the ocean, you got floating debris. Most of you are old enough to remember Air France 447 from 4 years ago. Early on in that one, we had a pretty good idea where the airplane was. We found debris within 5 days, found a lot of debris. By the 7th day, found 49 floating bodies. But it still took 2 years to find the airplane itself on the bottom in 13,000 feet of water, and the flight recorders. Air France 447 was a flight from Rio de Janeiro. It was an A330. Very sophisticated, very automated airplane. Departed Rio de Janeiro, checked in with Atlantic Control before it went out on the water. About 4 hours into the flight, something happened. The airplane disappeared.